All right, this is going to be part 2 of solving some trig equations. So this is problems 5 through 8. I have a separate video on problems 1 through 4. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on problem number 5. Keeping in mind I do have a piece of paper in front of me that has the trig chart, the ASTC chart, and that's really what you'd want to have, whether you write it out again on your paper or you just have it on a piece of paper in front of you. All right, so problem number 5, conveniently, is already factored for us. So we're going to take each factor and set it equal to 0. And so that makes two little equations here. So 2 sine x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, I want to solve both of these. So I'm going to start with the cosine problem here. So I'm going to do the cosine of x is equal to -1. All right, now it's solved. I'm not going to bother trying to get a reference angle because cosine does not have a value of 1 in the trig chart, so the reference angles aren't useful. But what is useful is the ASTC chart, and knowing that there is exactly one place where cosine is equal to -1, and that's at pi. All right. Visually, if you remember that would be this point right over here, which was, whoops, let me write it the right way. So -1, 0, and that's the point pi. So that's where I'm pulling that value from. Separately, whoops, we've got this equation for sine. I'm going to solve it. So we've got sine of x is equal to 1/2. And I want to solve that. So this is going to be my reference angle would be pi over 6. Visually, all right, ASTC, I'm dealing with positive sign here. So when is sine positive? Well, that's going to be first and second quadrants. So right now, because the first quadrant is one of my answers, my reference angle is actually one of the values I want to use, so pi over 6. And I need to figure out where I am in the second quadrant. So I'm actually going to slide this over just a little bit so I have some space. So in the second quadrant, I'm going to go backwards from pi over 6. So I would do pi minus pi over 6. So that's going to be 5 pi over 6. So that's my 3 answers. We got one answer from cosine and then 2 different answers from our sine equation. So that's problem number 5. Let's go ahead and slide on over to number 6, see what that one looks like. Looks pretty straightforward. It's a tangent equation. So let's solve for tangent. So tangent of x is equal to -1, which means I'm going to actually do a reference angle here. So tangent of x prime is equal to +1, which means x prime would actually be pi over 4. Okay, so that's, again, information from my unit, not my unit circle, but my trig chart. Now, the original problem said tangent was negative. So ASTC, and I want to think about, well, where in the trig chart is tangent supposed to be negative? Well, in the first quadrant, everything's positive. Second quadrant, only sine is positive. T here is tangent's positive, and C here, cosine's positive. So we want to look for answers in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. So if I do that, I have an angle right here. That's going to be pi minus pi over 4. And I have an angle right here. That's going to be 2 pi minus pi over 4. So remember, pi is sitting here, right? And we're going to back up off of it, pi over 4. And over here, we've got 2 pi, and we're going to push back off of that, pi over 4 as well. So this is going to tell me that x is equal to, let's see, 3 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4. All right, so either use a calculator or you definitely want to use some common denominators there. So whatever you need to do to solve those two, make sure you are answering in radian measures that are in fractions. All right, so that's problem number 6. I'm going to go ahead and slide on down to number 7 here. All right, number 7. Sine equation. Specifically, it's a sine squared equation. So let's go ahead and solve that. I move the 1 over. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now, one thing I want to be careful about here is because I'm putting the square root in the problem, I must include a plus minus. All right. Now, if you want to, you could actually break this up into two little equations. So sine of x is equal to 1, and you could do sine of x is equal to -1. If that makes you happy and it makes sense to you, go ahead and do it. So, remembering my little ASTC chart, I've got the point 1, 0, I've got 0, 1, -1, 0, and 0, -1. And I want to look for when sine is +1. Well, we've got one option right here. That's the only place that sine is equal to 1. And when is sine equal to -1, you got one option right there. So we know that x is going to equal pi over 2. That's the purple point up here. And x is going to equal 3 pi over 2. That's kind of the pink point down here. So those are your two answers for that problem for number 7. So number 7's done. I'm going to go ahead and slide on over to number 8, and this will be the last problem for this page. And this is fun. You might look at this and go, no, not fun. But basically, we want to factor this thing. We've got something squared, in this case cosine. We've got cosine here. This is a quadratic. Now, if you want to really see it as a quadratic, first semester we talked about some u substitution problems. You could actually say let u equal the cosine of x, and then this would translate into 2u squared plus u minus 1 equals 0. And you might actually see that as a little bit easier to factor. I'm going to go ahead and keep working with this. All right. So whatever your method of factoring is, use it. We're going to make that positive, that negative. All right. I know I ran through the factoring really quickly, but it's, again, use the method of factoring that works for you. All right. Now I'm going to take each factor, set it equal to 0. So u plus 1 is equal to 0. So we got two little equations here. So we got u is equal to 1/2. But remember, u is really the cosine of x. All right. Now this becomes a problem like what we've been working with. All right. So cosine of x is positive in two places. All right. So ASTC. And cosine is positive, let's see, first and fourth quadrants. That is huge. So hold on one second. Make that highlighter slightly smaller. So cosine is positive in first and fourth quadrants. So because we're dealing with the first quadrant, your reference angle, in this case, your reference angle would be, what is that, pi over 3. Okay, so I now know pi over 3 is one of my answers. All right, that's going to be the reference angle right up here. And then in the fourth quadrant, I'm going to take 2 pi minus pi over 3. And that's going to give me the other answer to this problem. So that would be 5 pi over 3. So that's the two places where cosine of x is equal to 1/2. We also have a separate little equation here, right? This one in green that I haven't finished, which would be u is equal to -1. Again, u is really the cosine of x equals -1. And that's only going to happen in one place. So ordered pairs here, here, and here. So that's 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, close it, and 0, -1. Every ordered pair is in the form cosine sine. So I'm looking for an x value of -1, which only happens right here. So that point, so this answer, right, cosine of x is equal to -1, the x value has to be pi. And that's the only option there to make cosine equal to -1. So those are the three answers for problem number 8. I'm going to go ahead and close the video here. If you've got any questions or concerns,